Alright, so here's the Typhon. Showed it a couple times, but it's a real dirty, sloppy kind of changed it around as I went kind of deal. You can actually see there's there's generations of old layers of hot glue and stuff like that. I guess the reason I do that is just because I know I'm going to change this one day, and I do a lot of changing on it, and I'm undecided. You know, I'm not going to solid mount everything until I'm absolutely sure, right? So in this case, I'm probably going to just rip all this out one day. All the hot glue is going to come with it, and I'll figure something else out, right? But for now, works fine. I don't care what it looks like. See, I've just got a little dome over here over the 03. Same thing with my let's just say my 1280 VTX. So audio VTX, fan blowing on it. Video VTX, fan blowing on it. You can see how I've got the antennas mounted. Just a simple thing of I want it to be able to bend all the way back if it has to, and it's not going to rip out the antenna connectors. Problem though, as you can see, gimbal is just all exposed. So it's kind of a trade-off, right? You can see where that camera's at. The camera being right about where it is there, you see I've sort of just put it on a servo. That's the perfect vantage point for me. That's the perfect perspective for me. Makes it super easy to drive, especially real fast. I can see everything in front of me. I can see everything just right around the vicinity of the car. And most importantly, I can just have a complete view of where the tires are, right? It just makes it real easy to navigate, especially tight spots and whatnot. Problem, of course, is just that if I was to crash this thing and flip it, there's really nothing protecting it, right? So when I take the body off, really the only thing I've got connected to the body is just this flashlight connector. It's kind of a mess of wires. There's really no one way to go about it. Basically, I've just got a main battery down here and then an auxiliary battery, right? I've just got a couple switches here. So I'm going to have one switch for my DJI, and the other switch is just going to be for audio. So I just like separating those because I might not want them both on at all times. Really hard to show kind of how this is wired up. But essentially, I've just got everything coming off connectors. You see I've got the 03 ARRMA down here, which is a great tool, by the way. This little board right here will make your life a whole lot easier, especially you know, if you want to keep tidy wiring, and if you're using the 03, you should get one of those, right? So props to Chad Rain for releasing that. This right here is just going to be the microphone for the 1.3. We got a little circuit down there. This is just a buck converter. So that buck converter is what's going to be giving me my desired voltage and current to feed my flashlight that I've got on there, right? You don't want to use some little stupid RC lights that are made for RC cars, because they're just going to be the cheapest, you know, LEDs you can find. They're not going to have reflectors. They're just going to be for aesthetics, right? But if you really need to see far, you need to put an actual flashlight on there. Got the voltmeters. So of course 1 voltmeter is just going to be switched off the switch, but the other voltmeter, the one that's showing you the main RC car battery, that's just as simple as, you know, most of your ESCs are going to have an output that goes to a fan. If they don't, you kind of have to work something out. I believe this one actually, I think what I did was I just kind of spliced on the output that was going to the receiver, and that's how I did this. But let's just say if you've got an output for a fan, well, the easy thing to do would just be to throw a couple connectors on there where you're coming out with a splitter. So instead of the fan just going in that connector, you're adding a little splitter. You're plugging the fan into one, and you've still got one other one that you're going to use as just a 6 to 7 BEC volts that you're just going to use to switch a MOSFET, right? So it's very simple. You're just going to put your voltmeter as a high side load. The MOSFET's just going to be a low side switch, and as soon as this BEC ESC voltage comes on, rather, it's just going to switch that MOSFET. That's going to close your actual ground wire to ground on the meter, and then boom, it's going to be able to read your battery voltage, right? So you know, you're just going to take the positive of the meter, hook it to the positive of your battery, right? The negative of the meter is going to go to the drain of the MOSFET, and then you're going to hook ground to ground, right? And so that's just an easy way to do that. So whenever you turn on the actual ESC, then you're going to switch that MOSFET on, and that's how you're going to get your battery voltage right there, right? So easy peasy. So again, it's kind of hard for me to show this, but you can see how I've mounted the camera there. I've just used a real solid servo. The servo, I can actually sort of use that to sort of trim the left and right manually. But it's just a real beefy servo. It sits it up at just the right height. Just got it kind of zip tied and glued down. It's not going anywhere, right? And let's just say if I ever really needed to, because this thing crapped out, well, then all I have to do is mount the camera on the servo, this auxiliary servo, and I can still pan left and right, right? So again, this is kind of how this is set up. I really like this. I just recently up to a 19 tooth pinion. So this thing really screams now. It goes crazy fast with new tires on it. It's to the point where it's almost too fast. But I really like that. Kind of hard to show how this thing is set up, but it's really like a no-brainer, especially with the O3 ARRMA. Now for audio, you know, I'm getting live audio through this guy, where I just have to have a little, you know, battery-powered receiver box I just keep with me. But as far as the audio that I might render into a video or something, I've just got that coming off this rear camera. So it's an old Runcam thumb. They don't really sell them anymore. But the cool thing about this is, you have to give it a 5-volt power supply, so I've just got a 5-volt linear regulator. But I'm just switching this off the same switch as my DJI air unit, right? So what's cool is you can basically set this thing to immediately start recording as soon as it powers on, and then as soon as it loses power, then it'll, you know, immediately save the file for you. So that's pretty cool. It's just a simple on and off. So whenever I cut the DJI on like this, then it's going to cut that on as well, and it's already recording. And then as soon as you see it beeping right there, it's just showing, hey, I'm recording. Then as soon as I just cut the switch back off, it is now saved the file. It hasn't corrupted the file, it still manages to save it, right? So that's pretty cool. So this one, I've basically got my little horn jammed down in here now. Got little headlights there. I've also got this flashlight which shoots a beam out that'll let me see pretty far. So this ultimately turns out to be an ultimate on-road rig, right? Where it's real fast in the streets, but I don't really plan on doing any crazy like jumping or tumbling or anything like that, right? It's just kind of racing, and I'm not trying to flip it or crash it, obviously, right? All right, so here goes the Fireteam. I would say this is probably one of the best FPV rigs that you can get, especially if you get it on sale. I would say, I don't think I would ever spend as much as this thing costs brand new when it's not on sale, but it's a really awesome truck either way. I mean, huge, beefy tires. Everything about this thing is pretty amazing. Got these little dudes in there. But the best thing about it is it's got a roll cage built in, a very sturdy roll cage, right? So here's the thing. While I would love to mount the camera on top as per usual to give me all the perspective that I need for the best driving, the smartest thing I think is to just put it down here to where I don't actually have a true FPV view. I don't want that because I want to be able to see both tires as well as I can, right? So I've got it just dead in the middle here. So there goes my camera. This actually took quite a bit of trial and error because I had to position it just perfectly to where this upper lip right here is not taking out too much of my view, right? So it's just enough where you see it poking up through the top of the screen, but it's just enough to let you know it's there. Like, okay, I've got something protecting me over the top, right? So I guess obviously the bonus there is I can tumble this thing around, crash in any type of way, and it should be fine. And I also don't have to worry about the rain. Just have to maybe add a little extra things on here to keep, you know, drops or just keep it from kind of pooling in down in there. See, I've actually just got a little temporary mount here. I had to cut this out a little bit to slide this down, but that's all right because I'm going to have to clear out some of this real estate in the future anyway to add a gimbal whenever the gimbal gets released for it. And you can sort of see I've got little voltmeters down there. I thought down here in the dash would be the perfect spot. So the way this camera is sitting, I could just barely get the reading. I can barely see what those are looking straight, but if I look left or right, I get a more clear view of what the actual voltage is, right? So I don't know, I thought that kind of worked out. Another configuration is where I could simply turn this servo around to where the camera is going to sit a little bit closer towards the front. All right, now that also looked good, but the problem with that is I don't really have any view of my instruments inside. Don't really have a good dash view. And then the face of the camera kind of sits almost flush with where this little canopy ends at, right? So I'd rather have it underneath. So I don't know, trial and erroring that. I thought that was the best way to do it. You can see the antennas are just kind of hugging the top of the roll cage, right? So those are pretty solid. And yeah, I really like this thing. I've got a flashlight temp mounted on here with tape. I'm gonna have to do a better mounting for that. Front lights there, which are pretty cool as well. All right, so now with the body off, you can see basically what I've got down here is these wires connecting the top and the bottom. The good thing about this type of setup is the same way as on my big rock. The body was so sturdy, I could just put everything on there and just come down with some wires, and I'm not having to disturb any of the stock stuff down here. So it's real easy to remove the battery, upgrade anything, whatever I want to do. I haven't had to fill up all this space down here. It's just all in the body. So you can kind of see, I'm going to kind of let it sit there like that. So you can see they give you just enough space where this is freaking awesome, right? I can tuck my auxiliary battery right there. I've even got more space back there. I'm going to put my audio transmitter. And you can see it's just routing all the wires is very simple. So really all it is of course, you know, I got the main car battery down here. But then the auxiliary, it's just a simple thing is I'm coming out with a connector, and that's splitting off into two different connectors that are each on a switch, right? So these two connectors I'm coming off of through this battery are just both switched power, right? And then each of those is also splitting off about 3 ways. So I've got about 3 connectors on this one, about 3 connectors on this one. So one switch is going to be the DJI, one switch is going to be the audio, and let's just say other auxiliary stuff I want to have on that switch as well. So it's just as simple as got a bunch of headlights over here. Now, those are all the lights are tied together, and they're basically going down to one switch. So this would be one channel that all my lights are on. I'm just using this little aux switcher. This right here is a servo tuner. That's what my yaw channel is on. So that actually lets me adjust the maximum angle that I can get on my look. Without adding this particular servo I got only turns about this much, right? So that's pretty much it. Not a whole lot to it. And once again, I've just got another little buck circuit down here to give me approximately 1.6 volts for that little AA flashlight I've got up there. But that's really all there is to it. And I've done the same thing here for my voltmeter on the battery. You can't really see it. I've just added a little MOSFET circuit down there, and that's just coming off the fan power. So there's a fan down here that's powered by the ESC, and I've just split off that. So whenever this fan is powered, it's going to switch the MOSFET on, and it's going to turn my battery meter on, right? Show me the voltage. Now, of course, the other thing, you know, the receiver, what I like to do is use Crossfire receiver. So down here I've taken out the stock receiver that only had like 3 channels, and I've got 8 channels that I could use off the diversity receiver. Actually, I think I started with diversity, it wasn't working right, so right now I've just got a regular Crossfire 6-channel receiver. So it's just got the one antenna. So that one antenna I've ran up through this guy, the little stock antenna holder. But that's all it is. I'm just coming out with all these connectors, and you know, I'm just running them over. Actually kind of got them running down through here. I'm just labeling them, you know, doing what I want with them, right? It's very simple. It's just, since I've got a 7-channel controller, it would be better for me to use the diversity that's got 8 channels. So I have at least 7 I can use on there. Whereas with this guy, only, you know, the 6 channels, all I've got is 6 channels, right? But you might not need more than that. So here's the diversity receiver, right? So that's what that's going to look like. You see it's got 2 antennas on it. Of course, the only thing is you're going to need to use the setup I've got, a little adapter board like this, right? So that's just going to be in a little adapter board that you press fit and solder on to the board, and now you've got a bunch of PWM outputs that you can connect to, right? Of course, here's my transmitter setup, right? So you can see this is just the TBS Crossfire transmitter using the RC6 GS, and just hooking it up through the DSC port right there, like that little battery down there. So that's on. Then I just cut Crossfire on. Now it's connected. This is the way that I've most preferred it. So let's just say I've got a pan and a yaw servo. Well, I would use this pot here to look up and down. Just leave it how I want it. As far as the pan left and right, I'm just using these switches, right? All right, so I can look left, get dead center again, look right, dead center, look left, dead center, look right. All right, so that's always worked very well for me. This one's actually got an e-brake, so I'm just using this button as the e-brake. Can do like slides and stuff, right? Here goes my lights. All the lights are on the same channel. All right, so that's my lights. It's pretty cool. When it comes to charging the auxiliary, I mean, it just go down like this, right? Wouldn't really take that long, but just have a separate charger for that, right? Technically, I could just put an extension on here and poke it out the body somewhere and recharge it that way. Now, another thing to probably consider is, you know, the ESC you're using. It's going to have a output voltage. You know, they say BEC, but technically this is just the switched output voltage that's going to your receiver, right? So with this one right here, it can either be like 7.5 or 6 volts. So while the 7.5 really gives this steering servo a lot of power, it's like really responsive. I just went ahead and bumped it down to 6. Still works pretty good, but that 6 volts is just going to make it so, you know, any auxiliary servos I use, like the guy that I've got right here actually, it's not going to get burned out, right? Likewise, you know, as far as I know, the Crossfire receiver can handle up to maybe like 8 volts or something like that, but just feeding it the 6 to be, you know, more on the safe side, right? Of course, likewise, I'm pretty sure that voltage is what's driving these fans, so these fans are not going to be driven quite as hard. But since I'm not running on 6S and not driving it crazy, right, I don't know, it's probably still be fine. And again, I don't have the audio transmitter hooked up yet, but when I do get it, I'm going to put it back there, and I'm just going to pick it up using this guy like I do with all the cars. So I mean, it doesn't look pretty, it's just some random deal. Put a battery on there that I could recharge. It's got the a Lawmate receiver, and then I've just got a little amp and speaker in there, right? So say if I cut that on, I can actually just use this little guy over here, cut this little car on. You know, they're all on the same channels. All the cars I got, they all got them. All right. So, you know, easy peasy. I'll basically just take this with me. You know, a lot of times I'll just sit it on the dash of the car, right? And that's how I'll pick that up. Problem with this one is, you know, since it's got metal gears, it's going to be real loud. So pretty much anywhere I put the mic, it's probably going to get drowned out by the just the sound of the car itself, right? But it's still good to have because I'll be able to hear the acceleration and just get a better, you know, feel for what's going on at the time. So really, whenever I'm putting this together, you know, I just make sure I have a bunch of these guys, just little servo extension cables. Then a whole bunch of these guys, just regular JST silicone connectors for just, you know, running all my wiring. You just want to have connectors everywhere you connect something, right? Just easily removable, modifiable, etc. And then I keep a few of these guys, you know, it's just a simple deal of, you know, come out come out a particular receiver channel, hook it up, and then it's got a little adapter there. I usually just kind of solder something on myself, but come out a receiver channel, then you got your little, I guess you could use that if you want, little DC output. So that would be, in my case, it'd be 6 volts DC that I could use for whatever. Step down for a light, run a horn off of it, you know, whatever I want to do, basically. And another thing, you can't really see it from here with the lighting, but I put a thin layer of conformal coating on this 03 ARRMA board right here, right? Because it's exposed. It's basically covered up with the body. It really shouldn't get damaged, but as far as water ingress and stuff, where you want to, you know, use something like this. I'm just using acrylic. You can use silicone as well, but I don't like the spray stuff because I just find it easier to use like a small little brush or something and hit the spots that I want rather than cover up spots I don't want to hit and spray it. But that's a, you know, that's a good way to do it. Silicone's probably better, but as long as you put a little thin layer on, then you're typically good for a lot of the electronics that you don't want to get wet, right? I really need to do that with the gimbal, but the only downside is you really don't want to be sloppy with it and get it in anything that's going to have, you know, connectors that, you know, connections where they need to be made, right? If you got like a little trimmer pot or something, you know, you don't want to glob it in there. And I also do that with all the 1.3 transmitters that I put on cars. I just take them out and I coat them, then I put them back in. And of course, you know, you can do all kinds of pretty stuff mounting it, but whatever you do, I mean, again, this is just a bunch of hot glue right now. It actually works out fine for me until I decide a better way. But any way you do it, you want to leave access to your USB port, right? So that's kind of the thing. Probably the easy thing would be a door that you can open and close if you wanted to seal it. Then of course you still need good airflow. So I mean, you know, this is the kind of the approach I took, where it's kind of slanted, and let's just say it is raining. I can drive this around in the rain, and that rain's not really going to get in there and screw with it, right? The only problem is the gimbal might have a problem with that. So anytime I have driven this in the rain, I basically had to put some type of covering over top of it, you know, some type of polycarbonate or something like that, right? Which again, once raindrops get in the view, it's hard to see and all that stuff. So without like a hydrophobic spray, which I haven't really been able to find for cheap, then you know, it kind of gets hard to drive in the rain. So again, that's another thing that I got to figure out. But on this guy, I might just add a windshield and windshield wipers, right? So that'd be pretty cool. All right, so the only thing I don't really like so far is, you see how you can't really see the tires unless I'm turning like that, right? I really don't know what to do other than just getting used to it, so I can avoid accidents like I'm about to have right here. So again, that looks pretty good to me, but man, didn't see that. Yeah.